And today we're going to be talking about relationships, talking about family. And in this conversation and relationships, I think it can, the way that we're going to take this, I think it can really lay over or fit over any relationship type that you may have. Maybe you're single and you're ready to mingle. Maybe that's you today. And if that's so, that's about half the room. So just look left, look right. That special someone might be here today. We got a lot of young adults here. Yeah, not you two guys. But he's like patting his buddy on the shoulder. But maybe they're here. But maybe your situation is maybe you're engaged or maybe you're married. Maybe you've got kids, and that's your stage of life. You're a family and you've got a few kids. Maybe you're single. Maybe you were married, but you're not. Like, I think no matter where we come into this conversation, I think today's conversation will be able to fit over your situation. And so, excuse me, I think in our efforts to provide for the people we care the most about, and our efforts to do significant things in our own lives, I think that the people who pay the biggest price for us trying to achieve whatever that may be, maybe it's our career, maybe it's our schoolwork, whatever it may be, maybe it's getting our college degree, whatever our pursuit is, whatever the thing is that we're chasing after, typically the thing that we're chasing after, the people that we love the most have to pay the highest price. Like when we're really pursuing after someone, if we're not careful, the overlap is it affects the people that we love the most. And obviously that's not intentional because the people we love the most, we want to give the most to, right? And that's the whole idea of this push and pull is that the people we love the most, we want to give the most to, yet we find ourselves doing the most over here so we can give them the most, which actually pulls us from them sometimes. And so we kind of find ourselves in this tension of wanting to do what we feel like we're called to do, pursuing these dreams, careers, school, whatever it may be, yet also trying to balance healthy friendships and marriage and kids and all that kind of stuff. And it gets tough. But here's what happens. When we're looking at relationships, I believe that relationships happen by design. Like they've got to have a design. They've got to have some intentionality to them. Relationships happen by design or they become defunct. I think if we don't put some effort and some intentionality and some purpose and some design into our relationships, this is going to be really profound. Okay, y'all ready for this? If we don't do this, if we don't put some effort, intentionality, purpose into our relationships, they just end up where they end up. And I know that you're like, I'm not writing that down, John. That was so good. It's really profound. But the reality is, like, if we don't do something on purpose, then it's not going to get, like, we're just going to end up being somewhere accidentally. Like, we've got a goal. Most of us have a goal or a dream to have a healthy marriage or have great kids or have great friendships or maybe to get married one day or whatever it may be. Whatever your goal relationally may be, we have that goal, but then we do all this other stuff. And I think if we want to see ourselves achieve our goal, in fact, Andy Stanley says that it's our direction, not our intention, that delivers us to our destiny. Our direction, not our intention. It's not just wanting something. Wanting something won't get us there. We actually have to do something by design, by intentionality, with purpose. We have to have a direction that we're going if we actually want to reach that specific destination. Excuse me. In fact, my dad, he owns a mechanic shop, and he's been a mechanic my whole life. I think for decades now. I think when he was like 13 or 14, he started working on cars with his dad, and now he owns a big shop. They work on all kinds of things. They got a couple commercial fleets and stuff they work on, and all kinds of stuff, like a 30-something car garage. I mean, they just big-time stuff. But I remember as a 13-year-old kid working with my dad some, and this was back in the day where there was full-service gas pumps. Which some of you, like millennials, you should know what that is. Baby boomers will know what that is. But you Gen Zers, you may not even know what a full-service gas pump is, but so I'll explain it to you. It's when you go to a gas station and someone pumps your gas for you and you pay more per gallon. So you pull up to a gas station and some little dude like me would run out there, 13-year-old kid, and say, like, they put the gas in and they start filling you up. Instead of being $1.50 a gallon, it's $2.50 a gallon because I'm doing it for you, right? So it's kind of like a waiter for gas stations, all right? That's the best way to explain it. And so I would like wash windows and I would check the tire pressure and check the oil and do all these different things. And I remember working with my dad and I really all I ever got to do was little maintenance things, fix flat tires, oil changes, alternators, belts, stuff like that. And so it was something I loved to do so much that I completely forgot how to do all of it. So don't think, hey, I'm going to call John. My car sounds funny. Like I promise you I'm no help now. And so I call my dad often. I'm like, put him on speakerphone. Can you hear that, Dad? What is that? You know, I'm just like the rest of you. But I grew up in that, and I remember something. I watched my dad over and over and over again have hard conversations with people. When they bring their car in and it would break down or it'd have some sort of problem, and he would bring it up, put it up on the rack and check it out, and then sit him down, bring him to his office and say, hey, you're going to want to grab a seat. And so they would sit down, and he would go on to tell them what was wrong with their car, and sometimes thousands of dollars worth of things. I mean, just problem after problem after problem. And it's funny, as I would watch him do this and have this, and he always did it so well and was such a grace to him when he would explain these things to people. I still would watch them get frustrated. Like they were so frustrated with the fact that their car was in this shape. And I would hear them say, I heard this, man, hundreds of times, people say things like this. Like, I've been driving it for years and I've never heard any noise till yesterday. Or maybe they would say this, like, I heard a noise a couple months ago, but it just got louder today and then it just stopped running and that's why I'm here. Like, I would have never thought that would happen. Or like things like this, like I know my back tire was looking bad, but I didn't realize there was metal hanging out of it. I guess I got to buy new tires now. Can't just fix that flat. Like, people would be frustrated they couldn't just do a quick, easy fix. That he would have to do something deeper or something harder and something that would cost more money. It was so funny. I would listen to him over and over and over again ask these kinds of questions. Hey, when was the last time you had your oil changed? It's like, right? Like, that's something you're supposed to do. If you didn't know that, this is free, okay? It's not in your notes. This is free. You're supposed to get your oil changed about once a month, about every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, depending on your car. But there'd be people that would bring their car in, not having had their oil changed for literally years sometimes. They're just like, I would just like top it off when it would get low. Yeah, and now it's making this really bad knocking sound, and it gets hot real fast. I don't know what the deal is. They got this light that's flashing at me, and he would ask really simple questions. And maybe if you know a little bit about cars, it's like, oh, well, they should do that. Maybe if you don't, I'm helping you today. If your car needs to have oil change. They would come in and like, well, I don't know why my tire keeps just getting bald on one side. Like, this is the third tire I've had to replace in like 8 years. Well, you're supposed to buy tires a little bit more often than that, and you should actually have to rotate them. Rotating them helps, and having them balanced helps, and all these different things. And I would listen to him have these conversations with people. They'd be so frustrated and so like pent up because now they've got thousands of dollars. And I even heard people say multiple times, like, my car's not even worth that much, John. My dad's name is John too. And they would say, my car's, you say it's going to cost $3,000 to fix this. My car's not even worth $3,000. I'm driving a 98 Chevron, all right? It's not that nice of a car. And so they would say these things. And I remember my dad just asking constantly about maintenance type questions. And I think there's some parallels here that if we could draw from that conversation that I saw my dad have over and over and over again, that we do these type of things with our relationships. We run them hard, we run them ragged, we run them on fumes, we run them with little to no maintenance, and then all of a sudden we reach some drama or some catastrophe or some moment that feels like things are falling apart, and we ask ourselves these questions: how did I get here? Like, why did this happen to me? Maybe I should just go trade this in and get something new. We have these type of conversations. I think in our relationships, we can have this same type of perspective sometimes. But I know this, that things that have value, things that have high value, they take routine work. So things that we value in our lives, and we're talking about relationships today, and I believe that if you're sitting by someone, whether it's a friend or a spouse or a loved one, whoever it may be, the person next to you probably care about. And I would tell you, if you care about them, the more you care about them, the more work it probably takes. But in our relationships, like, work often means dealing with hard things or frustrating things or difficult things or hard conversations or awkward conversations. And so I'm just going to avoid it. I can deal with this, and I can deal with this, and I've got this problem. But if I ignore it, then it doesn't really affect me that much. I can keep going, and our relationship still happens. Well, when we look at that, type of definition, I've got a problem, but if I ignore it, it doesn't really affect me that much. I can still keep moving. That's called dysfunction. When we have a problem that we can see and we choose not to fix it, we choose not to repair it, we choose not to spend any maintenance on it, we just leave it as it is, and then we move on and hope that it will either solve itself or that one day we'll just like move on past it and maybe I'll deal with it some other day. Well, we call that dysfunction. And I think a lot of us today, like we have high value, but we're not putting any routine work in. We see problems in some relationships, but we don't touch them. So we live with dysfunctional relationships. We do. And before you like maybe beat yourself up about it, the reality is all of us have a dysfunctional relationship somewhere in our lives. And I know this because this has been going on since the very beginning of humanity. Genesis chapter 3, you see Adam and Eve. Eve, if you know the story, she goes and she finds this piece of fruit. She decides to eat it, even though God told her not to. She goes and takes it to Adam. Adam eats it. And then when they both eat it, they look at each other and they go, we're naked. This isn't good. They try to cover themselves up with some fig leaves and they go hide. Here comes God walking through the garden. He's like, where's my people at? like I made these people so I could hang out with them and they're my friends and I can't find them. Where are you? And so he sees Adam and goes, Adam, why are you hiding? What are you doing? Like, why are you covered up? What's going on? And Adam goes, Eve did it. If you look at the story, that's exactly what happened. I'm just paraphrasing. He goes, Eve did it. Eve got me to eat the fruit. Like, I wasn't going to, but she had it, and it looked tasty, and she was naked. So it was like this whole thing. I just did what she said. And then so God goes, okay, Eve, what happened with you? Like, what? And Eve goes, the snake made me do it. So like right out of the gates, these two people have only been together for a short amount of time, and the first time they have any type of sin, the first time they have any type of failure in their life, the first thing to do is start blaming the other people around them. Like, so dysfunction has happened. So if you feel like you've got some dysfunctional relationships, you're in a good crowd today because I've got some, and probably the person to your right does, and probably the person to your left does. Because we do. Dysfunction is caused by sin. And the reality is every one of us has a little sin in our life. Every one of us and the people we love have sin in their lives too. And so dysfunction is surrounding us, and we have lots of dysfunction in our relationships. So today I want to talk about the ingredients. We're going to kind of have a little fun today. I'm going to talk about the ingredients that make up a dysfunction. So if everything that we do has to happen by design, I also believe that dysfunction happens by design. Meaning that we have certain ingredients that we're all throwing in, certain ingredients, certain things, certain ingredients in our recipe that we're throwing together that would give us a dysfunctional relationship. And so we're going to look at these different ingredients in our relationships, friendships, marriages, parenting, all these different things that go into the mix of dysfunctional relationships. So let's look at the first one. The first recipe, the first ingredient for the recipe for dysfunction is unmet expectations. Unmet expectations. I can't tell you how many times in my life as a pastor, as I've counseled and done different things and coached people and spent time talking to people about the different things going on in their lives, their marriages and stuff like that. I can't tell you how many times that I've had these conversations where I've sat down with a husband and wife and one of them starts talking about this thing that's offended them, this thing that's hurt their feelings, this thing that's caused pain in their life. And they go on and they go on and they keep telling one story after another. And sometimes this thing has happened over and over and over. And I cannot tell you how many times I've seen the other spouse, even though they may know that they've done it or know that they've said it or know that they've caused this offense, they've never considered that it was that bad. And that's kind of what happens, I think, in some of us, is that these things that cause us offense. If we don't deal with them, if we don't speak about them, this offense that has happened to us causes us to hold the offender captive. And I say it like this, we grow in our offense. We'll grow in our offense. Our offense grows when our offender continues to walk in ignorance. And so I've seen this happen where like a spouse is like hurting or frustrated or to their wits' end, and then the other one's like just waking up to it the very first time they're in counseling or coaching. It's like you can see the light bulbs going off like, yeah, I know I've done that, and I know I've said that, and I know I probably shouldn't have, but I didn't realize it was affecting you that way. Unmet, unspoken expectations. In fact, I would dare to say much of what we are offended about in our relationships, the offender has no idea to the extent of which that has offended us. They may know that what they said or what they did is offensive, but they don't know to the extent of which it causes us pain. They don't know because they can't see the world through our lens. They can't see the world through our experiences and what we've faced and what may feel like something for them the first time that we had that argument or the first time we had that conflict in our relationship, that first time that we had that disagreement. It may feel like a first time for us. What we don't know is that they've lived a pattern of that for a long time. And so there's this unmet expectation that's followed by unspoken desires. And so I think about this, if we're making like a pot, we're going to make a little stew today. I think about this is kind of like raw, these are like raw ingredients. right? Unspoken desires plus unspoken desires plus unmet expectations, they just equal frustration. It leaves us feeling raw. And sometimes these things that we don't discuss, I'm gonna throw a little raw in here today. So they're like raw ingredients, right? Like they're not horrible. Like the things that typically we get offended about in these type of situations, maybe sometimes it's like conversations like intimacy, things that we don't talk about in marriage, things that we don't talk about or don't know how to talk about. It's not a bad thing, but it's raw because it's unspoken. We have maybe some unspoken desires that led to unmet expectations. Now we have frustration. And so they leave us feeling raw because it's just not a bad thing. It's just not something we've handled quite right. I think about other raw things like macaroni, right? Macaroni. Who loves good Kraft macaroni and cheese? I mean, this is like a guilty pleasure in our house. Like we try to be healthy parents and do the whole Whole Foods thing and all that kind of stuff. But man, I can't tell you how excited I get when my wife opens up one of these boxes. It's like, in fact, the question in our house is never like, does anyone want any? It's how many boxes each is dad gonna eat? Because I can throw down a whole box of this. Anyone else? Can you just make a self-sized portion of this? I'm just confessing my sins before you guys. So macaroni is great, right? And I'm just gonna throw it all in here. But it's just raw. Like if you just were to take those noodles and this cheese packet, if I were to ask someone to come open their mouth and dump that in there, it would not be very appetizing, right? So like it's just raw. It's undealt with. It's unmet expectations. It's not necessarily always horrible things. They're just things that we've not done right, things that we've left to fester, things that we've let just kind of get out of control. Here's a great way to look at this. You've got expectation, right? Like the old Leave It to Beaver. The wife come home from work, get off work at 5, come straight home, and my wife meets me at the door. She opens the door. She's wearing an apron with no food on it because she doesn't wipe her hands on the apron because it's Leave It to Beaver. She has a towel for that. The apron's just to look cute, right? And so clean apron, fixed hair, makeup done, dinner on the table. My 2-year-old is sitting at the table, not making any noise, using his utensils perfectly so I don't have to give him a bath later because he had mashed potatoes. Like you get this like picture perfect thing. The house is clean, and that's an expectation maybe. And I'm really blowing this out of proportion, but you have expectations in your relationships. But then there is the observation of what really happens. I don't get home at 5 because I started talking to someone as I was leaving work and I have this conversation and I show up a little bit late. And so I get home instead of like at 5:15 or 5:20, I get home at 6. But then I know, and my wife knows, and my kids know they have ball practice at 6:30. And so as soon as I get home, I walk in, I'm like, I'm starving, is there anything? She's like, no. And I can't even get in the house because my 6-year-old daughter was playing The Floor is Lava. That's like her new favorite thing to do. And so y'all know what The Floor is Lava is? You have seen that? Yeah. So she takes like paper plates and pillows and boxes and toys and spreads them all through the house about 1 foot to 2 foot apart so she can like jump from one to the next, right? The floor is lava, can't touch the floor. Well, she's done this all up my stairs. So as soon as I walk in, there's sleeping bags on pillows and paper plates all up the stairs because they're part of the floor is lava game. And so that's what I walk into. Then I'm like, I got to find something to eat. There's nothing there. And so I get frustrated because I can't find anything. Like, why didn't we order anything from Walmart? Like, they'll even bring it to us. We pay for that. Like, we don't have to go to the store anymore. That's how lazy and fast-paced our lives are. We just make them bring it to us. And so I take my kids to their practices, and we start talking about what's for dinner. Now it's 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we decide, let's just do some Mickey D's dollar menu. And so there's an expectation, then there's the observation, and the gap between those two things is what leads us to frustrations. And so in our relationships, our friendships, our marriage, our dating, our family, our parenting, we all have an expectation. We have things that we hoped and things that we wish our family looked like and things that we hope we can do. We all have expectations. And then there's the reality of what it is, and the gap between those things is what leaves us feeling a little raw. And so, even take this, take a little raw chicken. Like, man, I love a good chicken breast on a grill. I got a Traeger. I know that's a sin to say here in Kansas. It's supposed to be a Yoder, but I've got a Traeger. And so you just take some of these raw ingredients here, and we can start mixing them up. Well, that doesn't really mix with that. But start mixing these up, and all of those things aren't horrible by themselves, but just the way it's mixed and the way it's taken care of just doesn't quite work. And so James talks about this. James chapter 4 says this, "What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you?" So what causes these tensions? What causes these things? Is that your passions, that they're at war? Is it possible that there's things that are going on inside of you that the people around you on the outside don't even know? Unspoken desires and unmet expectations. You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and you cannot obtain, so you fight and you quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. So we've got to talk. We've got to have the hard conversations. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to set people free from these invisible prisons of the offense and let them know what they've done. We've got to have, in fact, Matthew 18 talks about this. Talks about when we have an offense with someone, what are we supposed to do? We go talk to them, mano y mano. But for many of us, the first thing we do when we have offense for someone, we go talk to our friend, our mutual friend that we both have. Or maybe if you're married in a room and when you have an offense with someone, maybe you call your mom and dad first. Or maybe you call this other spouse of you and you talk about your spouse, how they never clean up or they don't put their shoes up or they don't do this or they don't do that. God's word has given us a recipe on how to handle these situations, on how to handle unmet expectations. Yet what we do and how we often solve this is actually building more war within us. We have sideways conversations instead of just going to the person and having a hard conversation. Let's look at the second recipe. The second ingredient for us is baggage from the past. Baggage from the past. This is kind of a sensitive topic because I think many of us have different things and come at this maybe a little bit different way. But I think it would probably, all of us can find ourselves in these four statements. Either an unconfessed sin, something that we've done to harm someone that we're in a relationship with that we've never come and sought forgiveness and never confessed, like, hey, I said this. Maybe it was gossip. Maybe it was something that we've done. Maybe it was something that we've said. We've never just made that right between us and the other person. Maybe it's an unsubmitted addiction. Maybe it's something that we're addicted to, something that we're participating with in the dark that we think it's just our thing, but we don't recognize how it's hurting us and other people around us. Maybe it's unprocessed pain, things that have happened to us in the past that we've never actually talked about or processed, and it just sits inside of us and festers and pokes and pushes and causes tension in relationships. And maybe it's an unforgiven offense. Maybe someone did something a while ago, or maybe it's even in a relationship now and you just hold it over their heads. You just, every time you talk, every time you see them, you just can't see past this last thing that they did. You live in this unforgiven offense. You see, I think for a lot of us, in efforts to move past our past, we just leave it undealt with. We just try to outrun it. And in baggage, our past, it works like baggage. It works like a burden. If you can't really outrun something that you're holding on to. So think about baggage, think about a burden, think about these things that stick with us, these things that we've not processed or that are undealt with. We're holding on to them, clenched fist in one hand, yet we're trying to outrun them like this. And every time we turn around, it's like, dadgummit, you're still there. And maybe we even get in some good relationships or get in a healthy marriage or find ourselves with someone that we're like, this is great, I've got good friends, I'm in a small group, and yet we turn around and they're still holding on to it. And that's what happens, this baggage, it's this thing that we're holding on to. No matter how fast we run, every time we turn around, it's right there behind us. This is undealt with stuff. These are things that I think are they're kind of like sour things, right? Undealt with, these baggage of our past. It's like sour things. It's like, if you ever think of it like kind of like gangrene, right? I know it's disgusting, but it's like when an infection sets in, and if we don't deal with it, it's going to slowly eat away at us. It's like something sour, like maybe a little lemon in our lives. Something sour in our lives, maybe a little vinegar. Let's add a little vinegar to our stew here today. This will be good. Maybe someone said something to you. Maybe it was a parent that said something to you years ago that was hurtful, that was hard. And they never came and sought forgiveness. And you keep saying that over yourself. You keep wondering if that is true. Are you really pathetic? Are you really not good for anything? Is it really true that I won't ever really accomplish anything? Maybe someone spoke something, it was like vinegar, it was sour to you, and that thing just continues to fester and grow inside of you. Maybe it was something that someone did to you. You can take some little blue cheese crumbles. This will really make it funky right here. Talk about sour. Every time I open this, it's gross. But you take something like a little bit of blue cheese, a little bit funky. Maybe someone did something to you years ago, and you've never taken the time to process it or say anything, and you've got this unresenting pain and this shame and this guilt that you think is just your thing, it's just your baggage, it's just your burden to carry, but you don't realize it's everywhere you go, it goes too. And so it just starts to sour your relationships. And then we just this is another ingredient. This is just more stuff that we're leaving in our lives that turns into this dysfunctional stew of relationships. And I think if we're honest, any one of us can say the first two things we've all dealt with. And in fact, many of us could probably say we're dealing with those now to some degree, an unmet expectation. Or maybe a baggage from our past, and it just ends up being in this stew and this thing that we're trying to make something beautiful. We're trying to take our lives and take the things that we care about and the people that we care about and have something great. We hope at the end of our lives, what's presented is this beautiful wedding cake. It's this beautiful story about how God used this person and how God used me and how God restored me and how I had a great marriage and had great kids that ended up being successful and did great things, and my friends loved me, and I was a generous person and a nice person, and we all want these type of things. These are the things that we want, but they're not the direction that we're going. We're just dealing with this dysfunction. We're just stewing in our dysfunction. We've got this recipe of these things. We want all of that stuff over there, but like I said, the Andy Stanley quote, that it's our direction, not our intention. It's not that we want it. That's never enough. It's that, are we taking the steps? Are we putting the things, the ingredients into our life that are actually going to bring us to those type of relationships? Ephesians 4 talks about this, says this, let all bitterness and wrath and anger, clamor and slander be put away from you. I love the way Paul says this. It says, bitterness, wrath, anger, slander, clamor. Put it away, meaning this. You have to do something. There's an effort. There's something on your part where you've got to say, I'm not going to participate. I'm going to take those parts of my life. All these things are probably in our lives to some degree. And it's up to us to make some type of effort to put these things away. And it says, be kind to one another. Be tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as Christ forgave you. Isaiah 43:18. Remember not the former things, nor consider the things of old. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. This is how good our God is. So you look at this funky mess and you go, yep, that's me. I've got some funk in my life. My relationships are defunct. I've not done a lot of things by design. Here's how good our God is. He will help us to remove the former things. He will help us to step away from our past mistakes. He will help us to step away from our past burdens and our baggages. He will help us to have healthy conversations, and He will help us make a way where it seems like there is no way. It's the kind of God that we serve. And so today, if you find yourself going, yeah, John, this is me. This is my stew right here. I've got good news for you today. I'm going to skip all the way to the end. I've got one more point. But the good news is this. Jesus can make a way where there's no way. If people have said things about you or said things over you or done things to you and you're carrying a weight that's unimaginable, here's the good news for you today. God loves you so much that He will make a way. Where it seems like there is no way, where it seems like you're in the wilderness, God can cut a river in the desert. He can bring you what you need in the time that you need it to see that your life is fulfilled and great. God loves you and He wants those things for you. I think in the church world, I grew up in church and been around church my whole life, and I can't remember very many times where a pastor said, it's okay to get help. But I want to tell you today, as a pastor, it's okay to get help. It is. When we've got baggage in our past, when we've got things that we've dealt with or things that maybe we've not dealt with, I think so many times we think, I'll just do better. Yet, if you would be really honest right now, if you would be really honest with yourself right now, have you not tried to do better before? And are you better now? You see, I think that God, just as He's gifted doctors to take a broken finger and to reset it, just as He's gifted dentists to take a jacked up broken tooth and put a cap on it and reset it and get you back going where you can continue to, just as He's taken and gifted different people and different things, a mechanic to bring in a broken car and to repair it and get you back on the road, just as God has gifted those people in those situations, I believe that God has gifted people to actually help you process these things and find healing and freedom. It's not taboo to get help. It's not taboo to seek someone that God's gifted to bring healing to your life. I believe that God can supernaturally, in a moment, can set you free. I believe that through a prayer. I believe that through the power and the presence of God, that He can do anything He wants to, and He can set you free right now in this moment. I believe that. But I also believe that he's gifted people that will help you take the necessary steps and go through the processes of finding healing and restoration and wholeness in your life. I believe that. And I want you to know that as a church, as a pastor, I believe that God can do that for you. I believe that God has gifted other people. And if you need help, we are for you getting help. We'll help you get help because I believe that God wants freedom in your life. And here's the third ingredient. Comparison. Comparison is the third ingredient. And when I think about this one, to me, this one is like, it's a spicy ingredient. It's something that when you get it, and the more you get of it, the hotter it gets. Have you ever eaten a pepper and like the first bite of it, you just take a bite of it, and I'm not gonna take a bite of this today. But have you ever taken a bite of a pepper and then like 10 seconds later, you're like, oh, it's not that hot. Has anyone ever done that? And then like 10 seconds later, no, it's kind of growing on me a little bit. It's kind of, in fact, my son did this the other day, about a year ago. He was like, we had some serrano peppers from this taco place, and he was like, I'll take a bite of it. How much will you give me, Dad? I was like, I'll give you $1. I mean, $1 is nothing, right? I mean, to see him go through what he was about to go through, what he doesn't know is I'd given him 10. But he was all about that $1. So he takes this serrano pepper and just a big old bite. It was like, it's not bad. He's just munching away on it. About 10 seconds later, it's like, it's getting a little hotter. And then about 10 seconds later, he's like literally taking a gallon of milk and like just dumping it. It's like going down his face. It's like trying to cool off. It was hot, wasn't it, Jaden? It was hot, wasn't it? That pepper. Oh, yeah, he's trying to act cool. It was hot. He was panicking. It was hot. And so, it's kind of, I think that comparison is kind of like that. At first glance, to look across the aisle and look at someone and to covet is the religious word for it. And look at them and say, man, I wish I had some of what they had. Man, I wish I could go. Maybe we could do this on Instagram. I wish I could go on the vacations they go on. I wish I had a boat house. I wish I had a boat. I wish I had a truck that could pull a boat. I wish I had a truck, all these different things. We can look at people and draw these comparisons. And it's spicy because although it may seem innocent, it may seem like it's no big deal at first, got any Cajuns in the room, a little Louisiana hot sauce. And we can look at people, and maybe you've done this even on social media, where you've had some rough times with your spouse. Maybe there's been some fights and some arguments, there's some unmet expectations, and there's been some things that have not been handled. And so your solution to that was go jump on Facebook and just scroll for a little bit. Then all of a sudden you see that person that you used to date. And you're looking at their profile and you're looking like, man, it looks like they're happy. Like, and she looks good, And she's recently got a divorce. I wonder what it would have been like if I stayed with her instead of breaking up with her and marrying my wife. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to couples that are in some serious dire problems, facing some serious dire problems in their marriage from extramarital affairs that they started off just like that. Just going to Facebook, scrolling around while I'm frustrated, while I'm a little bit tense. And then all of a sudden I see someone, I start to wonder what that would have looked like. And I think comparison could do that. Comparison could be this. It could be for us, for friends. I know a lot of you are college students and young adults and you've moved cities, and maybe you're like, man, I've got some new friends, but they're just not the same as that one person. Got a little cayenne pepper. Not the same as that one, I had that one friend in high school, man. We were best friends. We hung out all the time. We stayed the night at their house all the time. And I got 8 friends now, 8 new friends, but they're still not as good as that one. And we can hold them hostage to being like or trying to fit in the scenario of that person. We do it in dating. We can do it in marriage. Heck, we could do it with our kids. We could have our kids and love our kids and be excited about what God's given us and our kids and our children. But then we can look at one other family that shows up and their kids, their hair is always fixed when they show up to church. That's a big deal, man. If my kid's hair is fixed when they showed up to church, it must be Easter. That's all I'm saying, okay? But we can look at people and go man, what, they got it all together. Man, they got it all together. They showed up, the hair fixed, they showed up in a nice car, and when the kids all walk in, it doesn't look like dad was just yelling at them, because I know when I'm pulling in, I'm letting my kids have it. You're gonna be on your best behavior. They're not doing any of that. They say please and thank you. My kids just grab the donuts and run like they deserve it, and they don't know that you guys paid for the donuts, And so we can do that in parenting too. We can look across at other people's kids and go man, what am I doing wrong? What am I not doing? What did I miss? I wonder what it'd be like if I had a kid like that instead of a kid like this. And as horrible as that sounds, we do that all the time. We draw comparisons all the time, and here's what comparison does. Here's the danger of comparison. Comparison creates false realities that will never deliver. Comparisons creates false realities that will never deliver. We think, I wonder if I had married that person instead of this person. And then when maybe we pursue that relationship, and like I told you, I've had counsel and met with couples before that have dealt with this kind of thing. I can tell you as they've pursued those other people that looked like it was better, it looked like that would, man, I wonder if, like they've got their life together, they're still fit, or they still do this, or they got money, or whatever it may be. I can tell you that as they've pursued that and that what didn't work and it didn't deliver, now when they come back to what God did give them and what they did have and what was already in their lives, both things are broken. Not only did what they pursue not deliver, but now the thing they walked away from to pursue now has damage and it's broken and it may be irreparable. And I've seen it happen over and over again. This is where it started, with comparison. Just a little seed of comparison. 2 Corinthians says this. It says, not that we dare to classify or compare ourselves with some of those who are commending themselves, but when they measure themselves by one another and compare themselves with one another, they are without understanding. So here's what I know to be true. Those people that we look at on Instagram and we say, oh, it must be nice. Man, to have that house, to have that car, to have that wife, to have that job, to be able to go on those spring break trips, to be able to do nothing all summer. College students say, man, not parents pay for everything, don't have to get a job. You know, to have all these things, it must be nice, must be nice, must be nice. We compare their Instagram stories to our real life, but the reality is if we could get behind it, if we could see their lives with understanding, we would recognize they have dysfunction in their lives too. Because each one of us carry a little bit of dysfunction in our lives. And what appears to be better, what appears to be sexier, what appears to be funner, what appears to be prettier, what appears to be richer, I promise you is not any better than what you are. If you would just take what you have and say, God, how can I get better? God, if you would just take what we have and say, God, how can I do stuff and take my life with intentionality? How can I parent with intentionality? How can I pursue my wife with intentionality? How can I have friendships with intentionality? If we could do them by design, I promise you what you have will be better than what you ever can lay your eyes on. What we think is better, I promise what God has already put in front of you can be a lot better if you would just shift your eyes from that to this and say, God, how can I do better? A few years ago, I was flying quite a bit, and I was starting to notice that some people had some perks, that there were some different people that when they would get to the airport, they had some different things that they could do. And I was flying Delta a lot, and so I was starting to calculate my points, and I was like, man, I'm getting pretty close. And then I took a trip to Israel, which was incredible, by the way. And we're going to do that, I think, next year. So if you're interested in Israel, we're going to try to do that next year. But we took a trip to Israel, and I scored thousands of air miles. I mean, it's a long ways to Israel if you didn't know that. And so when I came back, I was silver status Delta, which, by the way, is the next to lowest status. But I was like bumped up one. And so like I was like my phone like pinged me and told me like, hey, congratulations. I was like, this is incredible. This is awesome. So I started trying to like read through all the different things that I would get. And basically all that I got was that I could board a little earlier into the plane. That was it. That was all. Like I now had sky priority seating. I didn't get better seats. I just got to get into the plane earlier than everyone else. So it's funny how that worked though, because as soon as I read that, I was like, this is incredible. Like I'm going to be the first one in the plane. When they're doing like first class and all this other stuff, I'm going to get to walk right in. But when I started thinking about it, the first time I used it, like I was like second in line. I was like military, and then I was like right there. I'm like, I'm using my sky priority. I'm silver status, baby. And then I got into the plane. I got to my seat, which is too small for a 6'4" guy that weighs over 200 pounds. And I sat in the plane about 20 minutes longer than I would have had I not had my perk. And then I waited and waited and waited, and I watched them bring drinks to people in first class as I sat there with them, but did not get any drinks. I started realizing the thing that I wanted so much wasn't that great after all. In fact, it was pretty good coming into the plane very last. You know, and so it's funny though how we do that, right? How we look at other people's lives and we look at other people's relationships and go, man, that must be nice. But if we could see behind the veil a little bit, we may realize it's not quite as good as what we thought. And that maybe what was in front of us, maybe what's beside us, maybe the people that God's put in our lives, maybe the spouse that God's put in our life, maybe the kids that God's put in our lives are the exact thing that God wants in your life. And maybe what needs to get better is you. Maybe where our relationships are going to move forward is not me saying, I'm waiting for you to start fixing some of the stuff and some of the garbage that you've got, but maybe it's me saying, God, work in me. God, do something new in me. I can't tell you how many times, I know I've said this several times, that phrase, but I can't tell you how many times I've listened to couples start talking about, or friends start talking about how that person that offended them need to start working on their stuff. And even the spirit of that is backwards. It's counterintuitive to what the gospel says. The gospel shows us that we come in meek and humble. It doesn't mean that you got to fix your stuff before I fix my stuff. It means I come in recognizing that I am nothing without Jesus. In fact, Jesus came down to this earth, and he lived on this earth, and he died on the cross for our sins. He created reconciliation in a relationship between us and our Father, our Heavenly Father. If it wasn't for what Jesus did, none of us could ever do enough good things to be in right relationship to our Father, to God. But because of Jesus, we're reconciled to him. And Jesus didn't just reconcile us back into the kingdom. He reconciled us back into the family. The Word of God says that we're adopted into the family through what Jesus did for us. He brings us back in as sons and daughters. We're not just a pawn that God moves around. We actually are heirs to him. We get all the good things. God has all the good things that he has. He wants to give to you, his children. But we get that because of what Jesus came and did for us. And this is what's interesting. Paul tells us that as believers, our responsibility is to do the same thing for others. That we have the ministry of reconciliation. That's our responsibility as Christians, as believers, to go into the world and reconcile people back to God. We can't just cancel people because we disagree with them. We can't just cancel people because they vote differently than us. We can't just cancel people because they hurt us before. Like, cancel culture is not kingdom of God culture. In fact, the people that have hurt us should be the people we care the most about, should be the people that we're hoping to reconcile with. And so, as believers, man, I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to step away from the dysfunction and step into healing, to step into wholeness.